I finally cracked time travel in the Generation 4 Pokémon games. No glitches, no custom firmware, no hacks, just a specific DS console and your game of choice. Waiting 6 hours for honey trees in Pokémon Platinum? We can cut it down to less than 5 minutes. What about waiting 110 days to unlock Bagon in the Safari Zone? Just under 8 minutes for that. Waiting 4 days for a Starfberry to grow? Yep, less than 5 minutes for that too. In this video, I'll share a new method for saving time in Gen 4. I'll break down exactly how these games protect against time traveling, all the features that are impacted, analysis on how various DS consoles work, and how you can save yourself a lot of time. Let's get into it. This was a very lengthy and thorough investigation into exactly how these games guard against the user time traveling to speed up gameplay. My original idea for this video was to analyze every time tracking system in Generation 4 and how you can potentially speed things up. I cannot stress how awful researching this was. Time travel is probably one of the most misunderstood and misinformed topics in Gen 4. Most of the tricks people said would definitely work to save time did not work whatsoever. While investigating everything, I stumbled upon a new time travel method and it drastically changed the direction for this video. Time traveling, date skipping, whatever you want to call it, is the act of changing your system's date and/or time in order to avoid waiting for something in-game. An example I covered in depth previously on my channel is the honey tree. Honey trees in Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum require waiting approximately 6 hours in order to spawn an encounter. This is really annoying because the only way to obtain a Munchlax in these games besides trading is with an extremely rare honey tree encounter. Honey trees and several other mechanics cannot be cheated by simply changing the time on your Nintendo DS. If the game detects that you time traveled, a 24-hour timer begins counting down and you are penalized in multiple ways until the timer reaches 0. And before everyone in the comments yells at me, yes, I am well aware that there are many ways to cheat this with emulators or hacking, but similar to everything else on my channel, those things do not interest me. I wanted to know if this is something you could achieve as a kid in 2010 with official hardware. The idea of sidestepping Gen 4's time travel protections 100% legitimately has been a holy grail of mine for a few years. 3 years ago, I did a speedrun of Pokemon Platinum where I acquired a Munchlax and beat the game with it. As previously mentioned, because this takes a minimum of 6 hours, the run took almost 12 hours in total. The thought of cutting this speedrun down to under 5 hours with a legitimate time travel trick was too enticing to not investigate. I should also say that there are several well-known time travel tricks, but they don't work for the specific mechanic I'm talking about. Probably the most famous one is the 2358 trick, which a lot of people actually brought up in my last video about the special dates that speed up egg hatching. This trick involves setting your system clock to 2358, getting into the game, and letting the clock roll over naturally to the next day. This resets many daily events like the lottery and swarm encounters. It even works in Gen 5, letting you reset events like trading with Yancey or Curtis. While this trick is certainly useful, it does not get around the time travel protection mechanism that is in place for things like honey trees and the egg hatching dates. Any meddling with the system date or time will activate this mechanism, and while it won't knock you out of every time-based event, it will mess with the ones I'll be talking about in this video. Okay, so there's a lot to explain before I get into the trick, bear with me. Let's start with how these games guard against time traveling, what I'll call time travel protection. Your Nintendo DS or DSi or 3DS or any DS family console is hiding something from you. You see, while you have a system date and time that you can change, the DS also has another clock running at all times that is completely invisible to you. In other words, you have two real-time clocks, or RTCs. Going into your system settings and changing the date or time has no impact on your hidden RTC. When you load up a DS Pokemon game, it performs 2 checks to see if you time traveled. First, it will compare your 2 RTCs and find the difference between your observed RTC and your hidden RTC. When you last saved your game, it saved this difference or offset between the 2 clocks, so if you load up the game and your RTC offset is different from the offset in your save file, you'll be placed under a penalty status for approximately 24 hours. This offset check is how it detects if you changed your date or time, as you would obviously have a different offset as a result. The second check for detecting time travel actually involves your system's MAC address. I won't go in depth on what a MAC address is, but you can check your consoles by looking at your Nintendo Wi-Fi connection settings. If the game detects you have a different MAC address compared to your previous save file, it will also place you under penalty status. This is to prevent time traveling by having a second DS set to a different time and just swapping the cartridge between the two. This also means that even if you had 2 DS systems with identical RTC offsets, you would have to physically remove the wireless card from one system and move it to the other to avoid triggering penalty status. Okay, now that we know how penalty status is triggered, let's go over all the Gen 4 mechanics that are impacted by this protection mechanism and how you can get penalized. The first one was covered in my last video about the special dates in the game. If you missed it, certain dates in the game have hidden effects like increased or decreased encounter rates and eggs hatching faster than normal. If the game detects that you have time traveled, these benefits just don't activate even if you are on a special date. You are treated as being on a neutral date for both encounter rates and egg hatching. The next impacted mechanic is one that was fairly underdocumented online. In Generation 4, certain dates can cause specific areas to have different weather. Most people know about diamond dust showing up in Snowpoint City or Mount Silver's Peak on special dates, but there's also rotating weather in other places in Sinnoh. One of the coolest examples of this is Route 212, where it's thunderstorming on 7 specific days of the year. These storms are cosmetic and function as rain in battle, but it's something I completely missed in my casual playthroughs. I took the opportunity to document the weather patterns for these locations on my new website, sinjoruins.com. I'll be posting all my findings to Sinjo Ruins going forward. There's more information about it in my recent YouTube community post. Anyways, if you're under penalty mode in Diamond, Pearl, or Platinum, the game sets the weather at all these locations to the weather present on January 1st. If you're being penalized in HeartGold, SoulSilver, then you'll be deprived of Diamond Dust at Mount Silver and get regular hail instead. Berries and honey trees function a bit differently under penalty. While berries can still grow and honey trees can still generate an encounter, any progress that would have been made while time traveling is not accounted for. Easily the most minor downside is that you can't trade goods in the underground with other players while you are in penalty status. In HeartGold SoulSilver, the Apple Blender from the Pokéathlon is also impacted by the time travel penalty. The Apple Blender combines apricorns to make juice that helps boost performance in the Pokéathlon. The mildness of your juice will impact the effect on your Pokémon. Under normal circumstances, every day that passes increases your juice's mildness value by 10, up to a maximum of 255. However, if the game detects you time traveled for this, your mildness will not change. This is not super impactful since you can also increase your mildness just by taking steps. While Johto's Pal Park has no restrictions, Sinnoh's Pal Park does. In Diamond, Pearl, and Platinum, you can only migrate 6 Pokemon every 24 hours. If the game detects you did any time traveling, you are locked out of using the Pal Park for 24 hours. Lastly, the Johto Safari Zone. The Safari Zone is one of the most egregious examples of making you wait in the entire series. The longer an area is active, the bigger your multiplier is. Basically, you have to wait 110 days just for the opportunity to catch Bagon. If you're under penalty status, no progress can be made towards your day counters for your Safari Zone areas. And just in case anyone is wondering, you can't time travel to skip the 3 hours between Balba's quests. These quests go purely off of playtime, as in time spent literally playing the game, so there's no way to skip it by time traveling. I believe this is the only mechanic in Gen 4 that uses playtime like this. Alright, that was a lot of testing, but as far as I know, that's everything in Gen 4 impacted by the game catching you trying to time travel. If I didn't mention something, you can probably cheat it by changing your system time or doing the 2358 rollover trick. So, how could we theoretically defeat the time travel protections and trick the game into thinking we actually waited patiently? I briefly mentioned earlier that if you had 2 DS systems with identical RTC offsets and tried to move the cartridge between the two to time travel, the game would detect the MAC address change and trigger penalties. Fortunately, a lot of DS systems actually have an easily removable wireless card you can swap between the two systems. So how would this look? Imagine we have 2 DS systems. One system's hidden RTC is set to January 1st, 2000 at midnight, while the other one is set to January 1st, 2000 at 6 AM. If you set the system date and time to match their hidden RTC on both systems, your RTC offset would be 0. At this point, you could load up the game on the first DS, slather a honey tree and save, then move the cartridge and the wireless card from the first DS to the second DS, and if everything's done correctly, upon loading the game on your second DS, your honey tree encounter would be ready. Do note that you would have to technically wait 24 hours for the initial penalty to wear off before attempting this. Obviously, this is not ideal, and way too much work, and I don't want to do that. If you wanted to accomplish time travel with a single DS, you would need a way to mess with your observed date and time while keeping your offset the same. This means you would need some way to either change your observed time without changing your offset, or a way to change your hidden time without changing your offset. At this point, I was unsure that this would even be possible, so I started investigating the most important key to time traveling: finding your hidden real-time clock. I had no idea how this gets set on a DS, and I couldn't find any information online that explained it. Nonetheless, there are ways to view this RTC, but only on 3DS, and it requires custom firmware. I needed a way to check the RTC on older DS systems to check every possible angle I could take for time travel. Fortunately, there is a way to figure out your console's hidden RTC, and it involves using the Gen 4 Pokemon games themselves. I mentioned earlier that the game saves your offset between your 2 real-time clocks, meaning that this offset should be readable by dumping your save file and opening it with a hex reader. This is saved in terms of seconds between the 2 clocks. Project Pokemon actually has a great page describing Gen 4 save structure, but it doesn't mention where the RTC offset would be. Eventually, I ended up doing a simple test. Using my 3DS, I read my hidden RTC and then calculated my RTC offset myself. Then I opened my Pokemon Pearl on the 3DS, saved, and then dumped that save to my PC. I proceeded to then open up the same Pearl cartridge on my original DS, save, and then dump that save as well. From here, it was a matter of just looking for my specific offset in my 3DS save file, then checking that same hex address on my DS save file. I used the online tool hexed.it to search for my offset, found it, and then compared. One quirk I should mention, the Project Pokemon page explains it better, but your save file is actually split into two blocks. One starts at 0x0 and the other starts at 0x40000. So you should check both blocks or just save twice to make sure your new RTC offset is in both blocks. Anyways, this search took 5 seconds because, surprise, it's literally the first thing saved in the block. Yeah, your RTC offset is stored as a signed 64-bit integer at either 0x0 or 0x40000. Super easy to check. By the way, if this stuff confuses you, don't worry, you don't have to use a hex editor or learn what a 64-bit integer is. You won't even need to learn your existing offset. So now we can figure out our RTC offset and, with some math, figure out our hidden RTC. All we have to do is subtract our current system date and time by the RTC offset and we've got it. At this point, I still didn't know how this hidden RTC was initially set. My best guess was that it was set when the DS console was manufactured and it was set that way forever. So I thought my best bet would be buying 2 limited edition DS consoles that would theoretically be manufactured at similar times. And maybe I could rig them in a way to time travel by swapping the Wi-Fi card between them. I did not want to spend $500 on DS systems, so I did more digging. I came across a fantastic guide by Riali describing a trick that utilizes a quirk of the DS and DS Lite. I'll be sure to link it in the description, but essentially the trick allows you to time travel 99 years with no repercussions, allowing you to skip the 110-day bag-on wait in HeartGold SoulSilver. The discovery of this trick led me to the trick I'll describe later in the video. Japanese blog posts from as far back as 2013 initially described the method, which only works on Nintendo DS and DS Lites, not DSi or 3DS. Describing it briefly, you remove your battery, which triggers a system reset. You then set your new date time to December 31st, 2099 at 11:58 p.m. Once midnight hits, your system clock actually rolls over to January 1st, 2000. Then you save, wait 24 hours for time travel protections to wear off, repeat the process, and get back in the game before the 100-year rollover happens. If done correctly, you'll be skipping 99 years. Utilizing the knowledge we just learned, we can guess what's happening behind the scenes here. Messing with the battery and doing a system reset almost certainly messes with your hidden RTC and not just your observed clock. Additionally, your RTC offset must somehow remain the same during the 99-year time skip, otherwise the time travel protections would trigger again, preventing it from working. I tried it myself and dumped the save at multiple points in the process to see what was happening with my RTC offset. Upon performing the system reset by removing the battery and setting the date to 12/31/2099, my RTC offset was actually negative 1,139,207,416. This means that our hidden RTC should be set to February 7th, 2136 at 6 hours, 28 minutes, and 16 seconds. Maybe we'll get Legends ZA news by then. I then let the clock roll over to the year 2000 and checked the offset again. Surprisingly, it remained the same, meaning that the hidden clock also rolled over 100 years. So, by reseating the battery and setting it to the exact same date and time, you are keeping your offset the same while advancing 99 years. Really useful, but simultaneously really limited. What if I didn't want to travel 99 years? Many time-based events exist that don't want to go that far ahead. For example, honey tree encounters are only valid between 6 and 24 hours after you slather the tree. Berries disappear after too much time has passed. Also, what if you wanted to time travel to a specific date, like Valentine's Day, for the egg hatching speed increase? This trick obviously won't work for these things. At this point, I decided to try the same trick on other consoles. So for this next part, I tested a lot of different DS and 3DS consoles. I ended up needing to order some because I obviously did not have a need to have every type of DS console before this. So I want to give a quick thank you to all my viewers and subscribers and the supporters of my new Patreon for making this possible. Thank you, thank you, thank you. First, I did testing that was way too thorough on my DS. The DS seems to behave exactly the same as the DS Lite, so I didn't test too much on that, but I did dozens and dozens of system resets and found that if you set your initial date to any day before April 20th, 2068, your hidden RTC is set to January 1st, 2000 at midnight. If you set your date to April 20th, 2068 or later, your hidden RTC is set to the 2136 date I mentioned earlier. Running the same test on my 3DS quickly proved to be fruitless. RTC isn't stored on the battery, and formatting the system through the software doesn't change your hidden RTC. With no way to change it, you would need multiple 3DS systems and do the trick I described before with swapping the Wi-Fi card between them. Enter the hero of the video, the DSi, a console I never owned as a kid. It didn't release worldwide until 2009, and it didn't even have a GBA slot, so I had no desire to own it. This console is the key to time traveling in Gen 4. While removing the battery didn't change anything, formatting the system's memory did. I once again did dozens and dozens of system formats and found that the hidden RTC did change, but in an extremely exploitable way. Instead of setting to a predetermined date and time, it actually resets to the date you initiated the system format on and sets the time to midnight. So let's say you initiate the factory reset on January 5th, 2000 and set your new date to January 8th, 2000. Your hidden clock is set to January 5th. Once I figured this out, everything came together and I immediately realized that I could skip the honey tree wait with this along with any protected waiting mechanic in the game. Let's start with an easy example, the 110-day bag on wait. To keep things simple, I'm going to force both my real-time clocks to be perfectly in sync, giving me an RTC offset of 0. Doing this is super simple, just format your system memory twice in a row to the same date time. If you're doing this yourself, it doesn't matter what options you set outside of the date and time. In this example, I went to January 1st, 2008 at midnight, then formatted again to that same date. Since my console date was January 1st, 2008 when I initiated the reset, it became my hidden RTC. Now that our RTC offset is 0, I go into the game and save. If your previous RTC offset wasn't 0, you have triggered time travel protection, which is completely expected. We could wait 24 hours for it to wear off, or we could just time travel again to defeat the time travel protection. Ironic, huh? So, I format system memory twice again, this time advancing 2 days to January 3rd, 2008 at midnight. Now that time travel protections are off, I go back into the game and save. Now it's time to advance 110 days. Same process as before, I format system memory, change date to 110 days in the future, then format again to that same date. Now I just go back into the game and save to lock in the Safari Zone upgrades, and now I can catch Bagon. So that's how you travel any amount of days with no repercussions in Gen 4. This is a much more powerful and flexible method compared to the DS and DS Lite trick. But hold on, I want to skip the honey tree wait. If I slather a honey tree then travel 1 day forward, I will miss the encounter window completely and have to slather again. So how can we use this trick on honey trees? Keep in mind that berries and honey trees still progress under the penalty timer, so we don't need to do extra resets here. I did a bunch of testing and figured out a very fast way to generate honey tree encounters. This time we're going to use a different offset. I'll do it on my Japanese DSi LL to show it works on these as well. It's technically optimal to do this on a Japanese DSi since it gives you less things to set when you format. First, we note our current system date, which in this example is January 4th, 2008. Then we format like usual. Instead of aiming for an RTC offset of 0, we'll be setting our date to the current system date and then time to 11:59 p.m. This gives us an offset of 86,340 seconds. Then we load into the game and wait a couple minutes. Something like 2 minutes is safe, but you can wait longer if you have trouble. Once the clock hits 0001, slather the honey tree and save. This means we saved at 12:01 a.m. on the following day. Now we format system memory again, once again noting our current system date and using that as our new date. So for this example, we'll set our new date and time to January 5th, 2008 at 11:59 p.m. Once again keeping our offset at 86,340 seconds. After setting the new date and time, quickly get back into the game and mash A. If done correctly, we should be catching the honey tree timer around the 23 hour and 58 minute mark, right before it hits 24 hours and deletes the encounter. In effect, by waiting a couple minutes before formatting, we are advancing by just under 1 day, allowing us to time travel for honey trees. I know this method being locked to DSi kind of sucks, but the quote-unquote bright side of this is that DSIs break really easily. They very frequently develop yellow screen issues, and as a result you can get functional DSIs that aren't perfect for reasonable prices. As long as you can load a game and format the system, you don't need the screens or the camera to work perfectly. But that's my big discovery. With just the DSi, you can time travel as much as you want in Gen 4, completely legally with a little help from Nintendo themselves. You can also time travel with a DS or DS Lite, but you're limited to only traveling exactly 99 years. I'll be documenting all of this on my website, sinjoruins.com, over the next couple days, so definitely check it out if you want more details or written steps on how to perform time travel yourself. Thank you so much for watching and subscribing to the channel, I really appreciate it. I hope more people are able to speed up their Gen 4 adventures now with this trick, and I can't stress how excited I am to have finally figured out all these details. I'll also have to revisit my Munchlax speedrun soon and save over 6 hours with this trick. If you found this interesting and plan on using it yourself, please let me know in the comments. If you'd like to support my research and niche Pokemon videos, you can check out my newly launched Patreon linked in the description. I've already posted a bunch of behind the scenes articles while I was researching and experimenting for this video, and have plenty more things I plan on sharing there. Of course, I will never paywall any of my findings, and Sinjo Ruins will never have ads. Thank you to all my Patreon supporters, and special shoutouts to Frorio, Ellen Campbell, and Mithra Was Taken for your support. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.